Welcome back, Sharkies. The PlayStation 5 just recently passed its half-life. The PS5 Pro is already released and the PS6 is probably less than 5 years away. If you're still on the PS4, you're probably wondering if it's worth it to upgrade. I mean, modern games are still being released for the original PS4, which was released in 2013. It was and still is a beast of a machine. So what reasons do I have to upgrade? The PS5 is 2 to 3 times as expensive as the PS4, so what makes it so special? I already did 2 videos on how the PS4 is better than the PS5, 20 features that the PS4 had that are lacking on the PS5, but this video will be a chance for the PS5 to have a rebuttal. And no, we won't just talk about hardware specs like every other video out there. Sure, the hardware is more impressive, but the graphics are barely noticeable. Is there even an improvement? We're going to go beyond the performance and talk about quality of life improvements that quietly change how you play. In this video, we're going to go over 20 reasons why the PS5 is better than the PS4. And if you like this quality of a video coming from such a small channel, drop a like for the algo and subscribe if you haven't already. Some things you'll think, wow, this does sound next gen. Some things you didn't even know the PS5 could do, even if you own one right now. And other features you'll wish were available on the PS4. So this is the PlayStation 5's chance to shine. Some things are obvious, but some I had to dig down deep for. Whether you have a PS5 or are thinking of getting one, this video is for you. You will learn something new today about this powerful system, and maybe you'll be convinced to upgrade when the price comes down, or when GTA 6 drops. Whatever comes first. Okay, let's jump right in. We're going to start with things you actually will notice when upgrading from a PS4 to a PS5. No more sandwiches. Okay, the number one reason I personally upgraded is this right here, loading times. I know we've had 10, maybe 20 years of this by now with PlayStation games on disc. It's a part of a gamer's life. When you start a game, you wait 2 to 3 minutes. When you die, you have to restart and load again. Oh, you want to fast travel? Yep, you will have to wait a minute. Now, the majority of gamers don't stare at the screen and find something else to do while this loading screen is slowly chugging away toward completions. Make a sandwich, go to the bathroom, scroll on your phone. Everyone has their habits. Some games even used to have mini games you could play during the loading screens. It's become a part of our lives and we're used to it. That is, until you try the PS5. Once you experience these insane loading speeds, you can never go back to the old ways. You will have no patience. You will realize that out of an hour of gaming, at least 6 minutes were spent on loading screens. That's 10% of your total gaming time. It may not seem like much, but that adds up. If you play 10 hours a week, that's a whole hour spent in loading screens. Now, as we get older, we have less and less time and patience to game. We value our leisure time because we have so little of it. So for me personally, this alone was worth the price of admission. Over the course of a year, if we keep the math going, that's 50 hours saved. And that to me is worth $500. Now, the loading times also help developers design games differently and more intentionally. With 0 elevator rides that mask the transitions, the loading times are so fast that it will take you months before you get used to it. Some games have changed how loading times work by adding a press X to continue, so that you can still read the loading screen tips that we're so used to. Now, if you want a deep dive into loading times, I did put out 2 separate videos a year ago that compared loading times of the PS5 and the PS4 with different configurations. I did one video specifically for Fallout 4 and another one that compared many other games, including the infamous GTA Online loading screens. Oh my god, did that take forever. So go watch that one to see how much the speed has improved if you're interested to know more about the loading times improvement. It makes DualSense. The moment you put this controller in your hand, you'll feel like, ooh, this is a premium controller. It just feels different. It's bigger and seems like it's made from less cheaper parts. But it's not until you play Astro's Playroom, which comes with the PS5, that you realize, wow, this is powerful. This is what next gen was supposed to feel like. This is evolution. The controller can do so many things, and that deserves its own video. Wait, I already made that video too. So I won't go into every single feature the DualSense has that the DualShock from PS4 didn't. I'll just talk about what I find important. First, there's the adaptive trigger. What does that mean? What are these marketing terms? To put it simply, the R2 button that you used to shoot or draw a bow pushes back against your finger. So if you're shooting a gun, you'll feel that kickback, especially if it's on auto. If you're pulling the strings on a bow, you'll feel the tension getting tighter and tighter. But that's not the best part. Some games let the L2, R2 buttons have dual inputs. What does that mean? Well, imagine you aim and shoot, just like any other FPS game. L2 to aim, R2 to shoot. But here is where these games get creative. If you pull the L2 button halfway, it's normal fire. But if you pull it all the way, it's alt fire. That's right, for the first time ever, the L2 is 2 buttons. Same with the R2, it is 2 buttons. Maybe that's why they're called the L2 R2. But before you get too excited, not too many games take advantage of this. But when you see it and feel it in action, you'll want the PS4 to die so fast so that every game made by PlayStation starts being made with these features in mind first. You'll become resentful that the PS4 has been holding us back the past few years. Next, let's talk about the haptics. Now you're probably thinking the Rumble Pack from N64, and every controller since has had some sort of vibration that comes from spinning a magnet inside the controller. But that's not what's going on here. This is some techno voodoo that lets you feel the textures. Skating on ice, walking in sand, walking on glass, raindrops falling down. You feel all those things with your fingertips. Again, highly recommend you play Astro's Playroom as soon as you get the PS5 so you can gain an appreciation of what this is like when it's actually implemented. Now, although this seems like a weird throwaway effect that you'll probably turn off, but listen to this. I was playing Warzone with an Xbox friend and there was an enemy trying to sneak up on us. Not only could I use the PS5's 3D audio to figure out where the footprints were coming from, but I could also feel with my hands where he was in the room above me. Because of this controller. Those useless haptic feedbacks let me know he was to the right of me. I could feel him walking from one end of the controller to the other. Him walking above us, someone below us. I could feel those footsteps with my hands. This is almost cheating. A sixth sense when used right. The DualSense has many more features, but let's just leave it at those 2 for now, or else half this video will be talking about the DualSense. Let's move on. File size. Okay, this one's gonna be a short one, just like the file size. You may not know this, and it might come as a surprise, and it kind of goes against your instincts. Now, we know that the PS5 games look better and run better than the PS4 games, but that takes a lot of resources to make happen, right? The PS5 game files must be huge when compared to the PS4 ones. Well, that's where you're wrong. Almost every game that has a PS5 and PS4 version, the PS4 version is always bigger. It doesn't make any sense at first because it's so counterintuitive. Higher resolution, more detailed models, particle effects, ray tracing, and yet smaller files? How come? This all comes down to the way the data is stored and accessed. On the PS4, to cut down on loading times, developers often duplicate assets multiple times to speed up loading. The internal HDD was a spinning disk, and it's so slow. So duplicating files meant the system wouldn't have to hunt as long trying to find those files. So with the PS5's SSD, everything is almost instant. There is no spinning disk, so there's no need to copy and duplicate. The files are cleaner with less waste, and so the games are smaller, even though they look better. It's crazy when you first come across this. You're like, wait, why is the PS5 version smaller? That doesn't make any sense. To get technical, the PS5 has Kraken compression. It has a dedicated chip that can decompress the data while it's being read from the SSD. So the CPU and GPU don't have to waste too many resources trying to decompress it as it's reading it. The PS4, on the other hand, does not have a dedicated chip to handle this kind of decompression. In a game like Spider-Man, assets like road textures, mailboxes, stop signs, bricks, they had to duplicate those things hundreds of times in the install file. Whereas on the PS5, they went with the Highlander technology. There can be only one.
Lift off! Lift off!
Okay, let's do a quick one. No more jet engines taking off. Let's be honest, if you owned a PS4 or play with someone who has a PS4 in party chat, you know what we're talking about. The second you open the menu, it sounds like an airplane about to take off. It became a meme for a reason. Some gamers even resorted to putting their PS4 in another room just to record gameplay commentary or talk tactics in a multiplayer game. God forbid you have proximity chat on. It sounds like your console is trying to escape the Earth's atmosphere. The PS5, on the other hand, silent. Like, is it even on? Silent. Unless you're installing a massive game or downloading a bunch of updates and cranking it to full gear, the fan barely spins up at all. That's thanks to a redesigned cooling system, complete with a massive heatsink and liquid metal for thermal conductivity. Sony clearly learned from the PS4's hot air. It's such a relief. You can finally enjoy cutscenes without hearing your console trying to compete with the soundtrack. If you've ever needed proof that the PS5 was next gen, let's be honest, current gen, just turning it on and not hearing it scream is a pretty solid start. Many users were surprised just how quiet it was. Some even wanted to make sure that it was still on. They couldn't believe it. But for others, it wasn't as quiet. And it turns out that Sony used a louder fan in some units and a quieter one in others during launch. So not every PS5 is equal. Internal SSD expansion. While the PS4 did get a point for allowing us to play PS4 games off the HDD, when we talk about internal expansion, the PlayStation 5 wins. On the PS4, upgrading your storage was a big hassle. It wasn't exactly plug and play. You had to crack open the system, remove screws around, replace the hard drives, reinstall the system software from a USB stick, and pray you did not void anything along the way. It felt like techno surgery if you'd never done something like this before. The PS5, it is so easy. The outer case of the PS5 just snaps right off. No screws needed at all to see the inside. This is great for cleaning the fan when the PS5 does become noisy after a few years. Mine still hasn't after 3 years. But also, they built in an expandable M.2 SSD expansion slot. You just pop off the side panel with no tools and you're staring at the slot. All you have to do is remove one screw. It's as easy as putting in an NES cartridge. All you need to do is get the compatible Gen 4 NVMe SSD and one screwdriver for just one screw, and bam, super fast storage that behaves like an internal drive. No system reinstalls, no cloning hard drives, and it's not just for storing old games. These solid-state internal drives run full PS5 games at full speed. Now, some people did do this on their PS4 Pros. Installing an SSD on your PS4 makes it a beast of a machine, but this surgery is not for everybody. For the PS5, it's a huge step forward for people who burn through storage quickly. So the PS5 did something I haven't seen for a very long time, ever since the 32X. Just being able to add one part to your console to give you more bang for your buck. The PS5 gives you the performance and the convenience without the Frankenstein setup. It's almost plug and play. Almost. There is that one screw. It's finally time to talk about graphics. We're not going to be talking about GPU, RDNA 2 architecture, and teraflops of power. We're going to talk about real things that we notice and feel. If you've ever watched one of those PS4 versus PS5 comparison videos, you probably had to pause the footage and squint just to see a difference. YouTube comments are filled with people saying, looks like the exact same thing. And they're not wrong. At first glance, PS5 games don't look that much different than what we saw at the end of PS4's life cycle. Titles like The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima already pushed the PS4 to its limits. So when people talk about PS5's better graphics, you might wonder, is it better? So we're gonna break down all that tech jargon, those mumbo-jumbo words, and focus on what it actually means in the real world. Well, the game world. All right, first and foremost, 4K resolution. PS5 games target 4K resolution, while PS4 maxed out at 1080, and the Pro was somewhere in between. But unless you have a 4K TV and you're sitting fairly close to it, or it's really huge, the jump might not be as eye-popping as you'd expect. You'll see things like a slightly sharper image and more crisper UI text that are more easily legible, and a little more fine details and things like armor texture or distant mountains and stuff like that. But when you're moving, you barely notice those things. So you really have to pause and compare to even appreciate that there's a difference. Ray tracing. You've probably heard this term thrown all over and barely anyone knows what it means. This is that fancy lighting everyone likes to name drop. On the PS5, it means you get to see real reflections in puddles and mirrored surfaces. But it's not just about reflections in mirrors. It's accurate shadows that soften or shift with the light, or interiors that glow naturally from a fireplace, or the glow from a neon sign accurately hitting the wall behind it, or lighting up the room in general with its distinctive hue. It's subtle, but it adds realism. Not every game implements it well, and some let you turn it off completely for better performance. That's what I do personally. I do not care about ray tracing at all. Draw distance. This one is huge. If you've ever played an open world game, you'll notice that trees and characters suddenly pop when you get close to them, and then when you back up, they disappear again. This is made to conserve resources. The game only draws what you can physically see. So draw distance refers to how far the game renders details like trees, buildings, and enemies. On PS4, things did often pop in when you got closer, but on PS5, it's a lot farther. Distant environments stay sharp and stable. Anyways, those are some of the terms that get thrown around. So yes, the PS5 is more powerful on paper, and yes, the graphics are better. But here's the honest truth. The jump isn't as dramatic as PS2 to PS3, or even from PS3 to PS4. We're reaching that point in the laws of diminishing returns, where everything's going to cost a lot more and we're barely going to see any difference. Like, I'm not even going to talk about the PS5 Pro because honestly, I don't see any difference. A lot of the improvements are subtle and require the right display setup to fully appreciate, which no one seems to talk about. A really great 4K HDR TV will showcase these updates, but most people are still playing on standard 1080p screens. Frame rates. When discussing the leap from PS4 to PS5, everyone's always talking about resolution. Like we learned in the last chapter, they're barely noticeable. But what is noticeable and more important is frame rates. It's not just about how games look when they're paused. It's about how they feel when you're actually playing them. On the PS4, many games were locked at 30 frames per second, which was okay, but it meant input lag and less fluid motion. The PS5 has made 60 FPS the new standard for many titles. Now, the nice thing about PS5, almost every modern game gives you the choice, performance or resolution. So if you have a very nice TV and you're playing a slow-paced game, bump up that resolution. You don't care about frame rate. But if you're playing competitive online games, you're gonna need that improved frame rate. But that's not where it stops. You don't know what a PS5 game feels like until you play one of these shiny bad boys. Yeah, that's right. Many games are now supported at 120 FPS. If you're lucky enough to have a monitor that can support this, this is what modern gaming feels like. Currently, I'm playing Doom Eternal and wow, that looks so good. I can't even describe how good it looks. I can't even post it on here because YouTube, I don't think even supports 120 frames per second. So a lot of competitive games support this. Things like Call of Duty, Apex, Ghost Runner, Quake, Path of Exile, Resident Evil games, The Finals, Uncharted, and Valorant. The game list is not that long for 120 FPS games, but when you do get one, it's like, oh my god, it is so buttery. But if you're not lucky enough to have a 120 Hz display, the jump from 30 FPS to 60 FPS on PS5 is still immediately noticeable. Games feel more responsive and the overall experience is just more immersive. But if you do get yourself a 144 Hz display, oh my god, this is unparalleled smoothness, almost like a PC game. So if you boot up a PS5 game and think, this doesn't look that different, don't worry, you're not alone. But give it a few hours, and once you experience how stable and polished and realistic things feel, you'll have a hard time going back to a PS4 game. It's like our eyes are used to it, and once you see the PS5 and then go back to PS4, then you'll be like, oh wow, this is slow. Anyway, let's move on from graphics. Blu-ray. Okay, this one's gonna be a simple chapter because there's not much to say here. In the last video, we gave the PS4 a point because it supported 3D Blu-rays, while the PS5 got rid of that support. But in this video, we're talking about 4K, so you win some and you lose some. One of the quietest hardware upgrades between the PS4 and the PS5, especially if you're into physical media, is the jump from standard Blu-ray drive to 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray drive. Both models include a standard Blu-ray drive. That means movies that top out at 1080p resolution. Even the PS4, which supports 4K gaming, still can't play 4K Blu-ray discs. The PS5 includes a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray drive. Not only does this support 4K, but it supports 4K HDR Blu-ray movies too, Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. This puts the PS5 on par with a dedicated 4K Blu-ray player, which is a big deal for home theater enthusiasts. Again, this depends on the TV and setup you have. So if you have a 4K TV and a Blu-ray collection, the PS5 becomes a one-stop entertainment hub. You got your games, you got your streaming, and now you have ultra-definition physical media. It's also more future-proof. Streaming 4K can look great, but 4K Blu-ray still beats everything in visual and audio quality. Because you don't have to depend on the internet, you get higher bit rates and lossless audio formats. Meanwhile, we got the PS5 digital edition sitting in the corner that ditches the drive altogether. So this upgrade is exclusive to the disc model, but for those still rocking physical discs, whether it's games or movies, the PS5 is finally doing what the PS4 Pro should have done. LIGHTBAR. Okay, let's go back to the DualSense for a second. We need to talk about the LIGHTBAR. Now, if you remember, the PS4 controller also had a LIGHTBAR, but it faced away from the player. It was mostly visible by the reflection on your TV. It was originally meant for motion tracking with the PlayStation camera, a feature most people never used. The PS5 controller shifts that light to the top of the controller at the edge of the touchpad. So now it's facing you and it's always visible. But it's not as bright as the old one, so it's not as blinding. This redesign is not about just looks. It's smarter, more subtle, and more functional. The LIGHTBAR now reacts dynamically to your gameplay. And it's not just random colors either. So in Returnal, Resident Evil, when your health goes low, your controller shines red. In Hogwarts Legacy, it even changes to match your house color. In Borderlands, when you're switching guns, the light changes according to the type of ammo you have. This is great if you're like me and you like to turn off most of your HUD. Instead of looking at the bottom of the screen to see if you're low health or if you have toxic ammo or fire ammo, you can just physically see the color of the light with your peripherals. You don't need to look down anymore. You can have no text on your screen at all. This isn't really a feature you build your buying decisions around, but it's one of those nice little touches that makes the PS5, I hate to say it again, feel next gen. Do you know how some people have LED lights behind their TV and they have it synced up somehow to react to what movie they're watching? This is kind of like that. If you're playing in the dark, the color of your room and near surrounding will shift according to what's going on in the game. Just a neat little feature. Let's talk about my favorite reason, the capture gallery. Now, in the PS4 video, I did say I liked the capture gallery a little bit better on the PS4, simply because it had a rewind and fast forward button. But what I didn't talk about in that video is the resolution. On my base PS4, I could only output saved clips that were 720p. But on the PS5, not only does it support 1080, but it also supports 4K. What this means for us is without this feature, we would never have this channel. I would have never started this channel. The moment I got a PS5, I started recording everything. That's why I have so much footage to show you guys. Just think about it. We're almost half an hour in. If you didn't see gameplay footage at this point, what would you have been watching? Just my voice? The sad thing is I treat YouTube like a 1080 TV. So the clips you're seeing right now are worse than they actually are because they've been compressed. Trust me, these look a lot better on your PS5. But the reason I have so many clips is not because of the resolution. It's because of the convenience. On the PS4, when you set a shortcut to record the last clip, it could be the last 5 minutes or the last 15 minutes. There was a place to do this in the settings. But the neat thing about the PS5 is the moment you hit the share button, you are shown options of how long of a duration you want your clip to be. So the instant capture allows you to record the last 15 seconds, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, It is a dream come true for content creators or anyone who loves sharing their gameplay clips. And because the PS5 is so fast with that SSD, you can trim a clip while you're still playing a game. So in the PS4 days, I would set aside time to watch my clips and trim them and make sure they're a perfect length. But on the PS5, you can do it while you're in the game. This makes trimming a clip and copying it so much snappier than it ever was. You can do voiceovers as well, and the quality is pretty decent. In fact, one of my first videos was made entirely on the PS5. I didn't use any computers or video editing software at all. This is a massive step up from the PS4, where captures were capped at 720 and editing was almost like using an entire other app or game. You had to stop the game you were playing just to go look at your clips. It was limited and sluggish. Another good use for this capture gallery is to help you remember things in game. So in this case, it's a password with like weird symbols. So instead of trying to remember it, you could just snap a picture with the capture gallery and then bring it up later to help you solve it. This is huge for games like Blueprints. Underrated, not for everyone, but definitely for me. I have this feature to thank for the entirety of my channel. Alright, let's stop it there. The video is half an hour long already. Oh my god, you stayed for the whole thing. And I haven't even gone through half the list yet. So, we're going to split this into part 2, just like before. But just to give you a preview of things I didn't cover, here are the things that I didn't talk about yet. The catalog, very important. The PS collection, 3D audio, voice typing, Discord chat, quick mute, game help, activity cards. There's so much more to talk about. I can't wait to finish this series with the next video. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, become a member. It's dirt cheap. If 3 of you join, I'll be able to buy a coffee. What else am I missing? What else has the PS5 improved on upon the PS4? Let me know below in the comments. What is your favorite feature since getting the PS5? Come back next week, and until next time, be a friend, and I'll see you again.